This is part two of session two on our developing teacher tools to help coach teachers to become paraprofessionals. As we move into tool three, I'd like you to take a moment and make a T chart and think about the observation conference model that is used in evaluation. Remember that all of these teaching tools are not to be evaluative, but there's some things on our next tool that will tie in very nicely to what goes on in an observation pre-conference. So think about the positive things and reflect on the negative. And at this time, if you would pause this recording and do a brief brainstorm to write down several positives and negatives of that observation conference model. As we return now to tool three, the purpose of thinking about the pre-observation conference model is that reflective planning as a tool is very similar in fashion to that conversation that you have during the pre-observation conference. As you can see from the slide, the goal of reflective planning is to help guide your teacher to think ahead about an upcoming lesson. And ideally, you're looking for them to do this multiple days before they actually teach the lesson. The more days that are in between this conversation that you're having to reflectively plan and the actual teaching of that lesson, the better for your teacher, because it allows them not to be frazzled by things that have just gone on that day or a sense that they're getting ready to be observed, especially if you're going to actually see this lesson in action, but to really think about the things that they want to accomplish. This is a tool that may work a little bit better with your more veteran and accomplished teachers, but absolutely, it's one that can also be tried with your newer teachers as well. And you can see that you're asking your teacher to focus on several different things. Absolutely, the goals of their upcoming lesson is huge to be able to think about those things they want to have occur with their students and to have that conversation. But you may move on from the goals to looking at the activities and the experiences of students that will help the teacher to get the results that they're looking for in learning. And if possible, moving on even into the assessment strategies that will help the students to be able to show mastery of the concepts that are being looked at in that lesson. You can see very clearly what reflective planning is not. Definitely, we're not looking to utilize this before a scheduled evaluative observation. The purpose is completely different when they do that. This isn't a traditional pre-conference. Again, there are some similarities, which was the purpose of the brainstorm, but it's not the traditional pre-conference conversation. You don't want to do anything here that will make you the predominant voice in the room. The goal is to get your teacher's thoughts. You are guiding them to reflect and plan ahead on the lesson that they're to teach. So basically how this strategy works is you would, obviously by way of introduction, set the tone in this conversation you have with the teacher. Start by focusing on their goal reflection. From there, move into the way in which they are planning to accomplish that goal from their strategies and the experiences of their learners. And from there, what are they going to look for in assessment? If you are going to be observing, you want to let the teacher give you an idea of what to be looking for and how we're going to gather that data to see how the lesson went. And then, just like it's good to provide feedback to your teachers, allow them to provide some feedback to you on the process and the content of this conversation you had in doing the reflective planning work with them. You can see on the next slide that when this training was presented in a live fashion, we actually did a group activity at this point. As you're watching this recording, you can't necessarily do that, but on the next slide, there are some questions, and the goal is to look at those questions and to identify the things that are described here. What are some really strong questions that would really help a teacher to in-depth analysis of their own teaching? Are there some of these questions that are weaker? But all of these provide some great opportunities to be able to have that conversation, that dialogue with your teacher about their lesson. And these are the 14 questions that are listed, and you can see there are a variety of things that you can ask and ways that you can guide that conversation when you focus on reflective planning with your teacher. At this time, please pause the recording and reflect on reflective planning.
Okay, so we are now going to continue with another tool, and this tool is positive reinforcement coaching. And so, with this practice, what you want to do is identify something positive that the teacher did that you observed during the observation, and then you want to connect it to the positive outcome for the student. So ultimately, your teacher will make a connection of a pattern, the pattern of a practice or a pedagogy that the teacher does, and then the positive outcome for the student. And then the teacher will continue to do that pattern in future lessons. So, for example, you do an observation and you identify a teacher's strength, like using a graphic organizer in a lesson. Then you will also identify for the teacher from the observation how that positively impacted the student learning. You will talk with the teacher about that pattern. Another thing that you want to keep in mind when you use this tool is the teacher's efficacy. And as an evaluator or a coach, you want to build on a teacher's efficacy whenever you can, and then that will help them internalize positive practice. So, when you are working with a teacher, be thinking about what the teacher is doing well. Are they a problem solver? What actions are they taking? What choices are they making? And then help that teacher identify that strength and then connect it to the pattern. So at this time, again, we will ask you to pause and reflect on the graphic organizer that's provided, and you will be able to take notes. Okay, so the next tool is Tool 5, which is instructional coaching. And this is a tool that, again, you want to focus on the teacher's practice and coach them, either coach them in a positive way and so that they continue that practice, or you want to coach them so they could substitute something that they did not do correctly and replace it with an effective practice. Coaching is something that could be done with all teachers, whether they're a novice teacher or an experienced teacher and they want to refine their practice. So again, when after an observation, you want to be direct and straightforward with the teacher, identify something positive or identify the action that needs to be corrected, and then work with the teacher on ways to work with their teaching behavior. So whether it's reinforcing a positive practice or replacing a negative practice. When you're talking about coaching, one way to dig deeper into this practice is to focus on initiatives that are happening in your school. It could be a district wide initiative, or you can circle back to the growth plan and have your teacher reflect on an area that they want to be coached on, and then you can help them with that practice. So at this point, we are going to pause the video and you can discuss at your table uh, possible areas that for coaching, ways, strategies for coaching, and plan ahead for when you will be coaching a teacher.